Hello everyone, welcome to an awesome Monday. My name is Richard Carlton. I'm the creator of fmtraining.tv, where we create great FileMaker training, on-demand training courses for the FileMaker platform. We also do daily live streams Monday through Friday at this time slot. Happens to be 1 o'clock for me, but for everyone else around the world, welcome. I really appreciate that you're here. Today is day one of some really exciting stuff. Remember, I have a rule. I never want to be the smartest guy in the room because that's real bad, right? So today I have many people much smarter than I am. They are here to help us out. So we're going to be talking about FileMaker in the enterprise specifically, and synchronization. It's not just the enterprise, but really syncing between two copies of FileMaker. And it's kind of applicable in the enterprise a little bit. Claris for 30 years has really never positioned itself as an enterprise product or platform. And what's happened recently is that we don't hear marketing talking to us so much as we don't hear the Claris saying, hey, we're enterprise now. What ends up happening is that when the CEO at Claris talks to folks, especially in the media, he starts using these words like enterprise software. And so Claris is apparently attempting to reposition itself as an enterprise product. Just keep in mind that that is something that they have not historically done. And of course, that brings up the question, what is enterprise? Because most of us don't really build enterprise applications. We build applications. The biggest FileMaker solutions most of the time have 200 or 300 users. But what if you needed thousands of users, right? Well, you know, simultaneous users, then really you have to have more than one server. You want those people to be sharing the same data. And that's really what today is all about. It's about bringing FileMaker to the enterprise, or the enterprise to FileMaker, whichever. And so a basic FileMaker solution by itself, you know, you really need to think about designing efficiently, designing what we call lean design in our course curriculum. I'm going to jump over here real quick to our live training schedule. But what you're going to see is if I go up under here, a lot of you who are familiar, we have some new people here, but a lot of you are familiar with Nick Hunter, right? And Nick Hunter has a free video course where we talk about lean design. And so this is probably 20 hours of training here. That's just pretty on the high end of learning how to make your FileMaker solutions work very, very well, right? And so the lean design is a big part of this, but you also need some great third-party companies like 360works. Basically, the plan for today is to start the conversation about sync. I'm going to be playing air traffic control a little bit with this, with Jesse, or helping him out a little bit. So let's talk about the little news real quick. FileMaker is coming up with their Engage conference, or their DevCon conference. They call it Engage, but no one knows what Engage is. So it's still kind of DevCon. For those of you who wanted a DevCon deal, we are bringing back the double bundle that we have. So you can get 2 copies of our complete training, which includes FileMaker Pro 19, includes all the stuff that we have. You can access that at HTTPS, but it's this bit.ly, it's this FM double. We'll make sure we put that into Discord, Twitch, and YouTube as well. This is a really great bundle. You get everything for 2 people. Pretty exciting. So today's conversation, this is Jesse Barnum. This is the awesome guy that he is. He is pretty neat guy. He's been doing DevCon presentations for many, many years. We kind of bug him periodically and present on critical technology. I frequently will spend time, as you folks know this, I do live streams. We will talk about 360works. We talk about, you know, Nick Orr at Goya, another mission critical company. 360works has been ultra mission critical for Claris. I don't know that Claris would ever tell you this, but I mean, like I said, 360works saved back at the time FileMaker's ass back in the day. It was around FileMaker 8, 5, 9, 10 time frame. Digital document management never existed in FileMaker until Jesse brought it to the platform. And so, you know, once again, this is another situation where Claris wants to push to the enterprise, but they can't really get there unless you have a really highly efficient FileMaker solution, 1, 2, and you have some replication or synchronization software to synchronize the server. So we'll get into that conversation just briefly. I also want to point out the fact that we were trying to decide what artwork we were going to use with Jesse, since he is now in the enterprise, and I told him to make sure that he has 4 pips because he is a captain. So we are going to be doing live streaming once again with Jesse for the next 4 days. This is all on the same topic. Jesse has a propensity to just like run through this at 500 miles an hour. He practices doing this presentation at speed. The problem is today's more of a conversation to bring everyone up to date, everyone who's not a certified Ninja FileMaker developer. If I show you our diagram right here, we're going to try to include everyone. If you're Bunny, right? Bunny, are you there? Maverick the Goose. Bunny, are you there? Come in. I don't see Bunny. So Bunny may not be here yet, but we have brand new developers, one of which is Bunny. He is in the Netherlands, I think. Is that where you're at? But intermediate developers and senior ninjas. Jesse, if you had to rank Jesse's skill set, he's over here breaking off the side of the paper over here, right? So he tends to talk like we're all over here, but I have to slow him down with this for the entire audience. So what I want to do is make sure that everyone here asks questions. Feel free to slow us down if we're going too fast. Now, I want to see if Jesse is there. He's unmuted. Are you there, Jesse Barnum? Everyone, this is Jesse. He's the CEO of 360works. Really awesome guy, very talented individual. He's talented in Amazon and building products like I'm talented in putting training together in FileMaker. So we together make a very dangerous team. In fact, this is the guy, when we watch the rolling credits, is hiking the $50,000 to me. Right, in the football when we're playing $50,000. It was actually $50,000 football stack of.
There was a better story that happened at that DevCon.
What was that?
That was, remember the guy walking around with his xylophone trying to get him to clear out of the vendor area, and you got him in a headlock?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Am I allowed to mention that?
Well, yeah. That was the year before. So I'm kind of a marginally aggressive individual. So yeah, I told them. So they have this poor hotel. Okay, so one story.
He looked pretty scared.
So what they're doing is that they're at DevCon, if they ever do a DevCon again, which is a really interesting question, if we're taking bets on whether that ever happens again. But
if it does, I hope it's in Nashville.
Yeah, it'd be really nice.
I'm excited.
And so they have like everyone's having lunch, and then they walk through. The guy with like some poor hotel employee gives us this like xylophone chimes with the ding-dongy thing on our cup or whatever, and he's walking through going ding 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 ding, and that's your like subtle clue that you should head for a session.
Time to clear out
and quit talking to your friends about FileMaker and go watch a session on FileMaker. And I'm trying to like talk to people and sell product or talk about Jesse, or I'm doing a live broadcast. I can't remember what it was. And he's going ding ding, and I told him, I said, you keep doing that, I'm gonna you up, right? And he came right by and did it again. I ran over and grabbed him, put him in a headlock, and I guess he dropped the dinger. I don't remember what happened. I've kind of like fuzzed that out of my mind. But
everybody was smiling. He was smiling. You were smiling. I just couldn't tell if it was like a smile of fear or a smile of like he's in on the joke. I couldn't quite tell.
Yeah, let's get on with this thing. So Christian, I keep calling you Christian because we got Christian Olsen. He's floating around here too somewhere. Talk about the enterprise. What is the enterprise to you, Jesse, and what is this Mirrorsync product? You want to walk us through that a little bit verbally, I guess?
Yeah. So, an enterprise is a company where, typically large companies, they're very risk averse. You get to be a certain size and your priorities change. And rather than focusing necessarily on being like the nimblest and the fastest, you're focused more on being the most reliable and scalability. And Richard, you brought up the points, enterprise and scalability, I think, when you were talking about like an introduction.
Yeah.
And it made me think about something that I hadn't planned on mentioning, but it really kind of jogged a point of mine, is that I think a lot of people in small businesses may not understand what scalability means. They hear scalability and they think scalability means fast. If a customer says, I want something that's scalable, I think a lot of us are used to thinking, oh, well, they want it to be fast. And those two terms don't mean the same thing. And we'll get into this more, as we talk about some of the things that Mirrorsync can do. But so let's say that you have two systems, and system A takes 5 seconds to run a particular operation, and system B takes 1 second to run that same operation. Well, you could accurately say that system B is faster than system A. A takes 5 seconds, B takes 1 second. So B wins on speed. Now let's talk about scalability. Let's say that you now have 1,000 users accessing those same servers. And system A still takes 5 seconds each time a user does it, when there's 1,000 users doing it at the same time. System B, each user who clicks it takes 1,000 seconds to get that thing done. System B is faster than A, but it is definitely not more scalable than A. And so, so scalability is basically the question of how adversely affected does your speed become as you increase the number of users? And that's where you really get into the enterprise. Is it's not so much about does this button take half a second or 3/4 of a second? It's more like if I've got 500 people all clicking this button at the same time, what happens?
Yeah, that is a really great explanation. I mean, I can't do any better. So the idea is that it's, and we talk about this with FileMaker. The idea with scalability, we talk about this, and I just want to frame this and then we'll go forward, is that when you're brand new to the FileMaker platform, you're happy to get it to work at all. Does that make sense? You're happy to get FileMaker to work at all. And then as you start to roll it out with a team of people on a FileMaker server, the cloud, 5 people is great, 10 people is great. There's a magical number in there where the performance starts to drag because you haven't thought about performance at all. And so it typically happens somewhere between 20 and 30 people, maybe a little higher than 30, but where the performance will go off a cliff. And that is where it's not scalable. So we're trying to help you kind of grow your user base to 50 or 100 or 200 people. Last year, we took FM Starting Point, which is this free CRM. We talk about the free CRM all the time. I'm going to hit the button for the starting point right here. So this is the free starting point. It's an updated version. This has been tested on a single pretty decently sized Amazon server at 200 to 300 people. It was 261, and then we did some things to try to break it. And so one FileMaker server can do all that, right? Does that make sense? But what if we have 1,000 people, or we have people around the world? Well, today's conversation, we're going to kind of kick this over and get this going. So we're going to jump over to Jesse. Hang on one second. I'm jumping to you, Jesse. There we are. Okay. Yeah. All right. So go ahead, Jesse.
So are my slides up right now?
Yeah, you're clear. Absolutely.
All right, cool. Okay, so I want to talk about, so the product that we make is called Mirrorsync. And before I really dive into these bullet points here, I just want to give a really kind of just very broad overview. I'm sure people on this call, I know some of you by name, and I know some of you are using Mirrorsync heavily, so I know you guys already know this. But I'm not sure everybody on the call understands, you know, what sync is or what Mirrorsync is or why you would care or why you would use it. So our most common reason that people buy Mirrorsync is because they want to be able to take FileMaker Go on their either their phone or their iPad and go places that either they have no connection or they have a slow connection or they have an inconsistent connection. And you know, all three of those are kind of different. One of our biggest Mirrorsync customers, they use it for emergency medical staff, paramedics, firefighters, that kind of stuff. And so they might have a really good signal in the back of their ambulance as they're driving in one area, but as they start to key data in about the guy that they're rushing to the hospital, they drop the connection between, you know, cell towers. And so if it was a normal situation where they were connected as a guest to FileMaker server, that would kick them out of whatever they were doing. They would have to relog back in, reload all of the schema and scripts and layouts and things like that, and then try to find where they were and pick back up and hopefully not lose the connection again. So clearly in that case, you need the ability when you're, you know, riding in the back of an ambulance on the way to the hospital, you need a way to enter data that is not going to get interrupted if your cell connection drops. If you are doing, you know, I didn't even really realize how big this industry was until people started buying Mirrorsync, but oil pipelines, there's a field inspections of like oil rigs, pipelines, water lines, gas lines, and things like that. And they're out in the middle of nowhere. And so obviously they're not going to have any internet connection, but they still want to be able to use FileMaker to take pictures, to take readings, enter measurements, that kind of stuff, ensure compliance. A really funny one is one of our customers uses Mirrorsync and FileMaker for cell phone tower construction. And so by definition, wherever they are, there is no cell signal. Otherwise, they wouldn't be building a cell tower there. So they need to do land surveys, that kind of stuff, and they want to use FileMaker to do it. So Mirrorsync is a really good choice for those kinds of things. Even if you are not out in the wild or in a remote place or driving at 70 miles an hour in traffic, it's often still annoying to connect to FileMaker server as a guest. It's just slow in many cases. You're often limited by the amount of bandwidth available to you on either your cell connection or your Wi-Fi connection. So another case where people are using Mirrorsync for our stuff is rental car check-ins. Some FileMaker developers that I'm friends with built a vertical market app so that when someone returns a rental car, they have a FileMaker Go application that they use to scan the odometer and that kind of stuff. Now they could put in Wi-Fi hotspots and it would probably work, but they don't want to worry about that potential point of failure. They don't want to worry about all of a sudden a dozen people not being able to do their jobs if the Wi-Fi gets disrupted for some reason. So if you're able to work on your own copy of the database that is loaded on your iPad or your phone, then you know it's going to be fast, you know that nothing is going to interrupt it, and you know you can go anywhere with it. So that's the kind of core mission of Mirrorsync.
But Joe Martin's answering some questions. Scott asked, does Mirrorsync work between server versions, say between like an 18 server and a 19 server? Can you sync between the two?
Mirrorsync 6, which is our newest and best version, supports FileMaker Server 17 and later.
Okay.
So you can sync between anything in that range. You could sync between 17 and 18, 17 and 19, 18 and 19, whatever you want. It also does support FileMaker Cloud, the new FileMaker Cloud 2, but there's a really awful, terrible bug that I've reported to FileMaker that I keep following up with them on. The data API simply doesn't work.
There's really not a really great, easy way with a trusted third party where you can actually use the data API really, really well. At least that's like if you're going to make a page there with it. You have to use some questionable libraries with questionable lineage to make that work. And so pending the current time, if you need a PHP/gateway/data API, like when I press this button here to show you the upcoming live schedule, this is basically the FileMaker data API. These are records, these are records in a FileMaker solution. Cloud 2 just for the moment doesn't do this like it needs to, and so we're basically, for the most part, if you're doing any sort of creative syncing of any of this stuff, you need to use FileMaker Server, and most people do that with Amazon with an EC2 instance on Windows, right, or something along those lines. So, but that's
and actually, let me jump in for 1 second. Point out, everybody in this call can actually help with this. If you would like to try and help with this, go onto the FileMaker community, search in the bugs and issues list. I've reported a bug to them, and it's called, I wish I remember the title exactly, but basically if you search for Data API FileMaker Cloud intermittent, you'll find the issue that I've outlined. Look for Jesse Barnum and a list of posters and vote for it. And if half of the people in this call voted it up, it would probably get fixed. Right now there's 2 votes for it.
Well, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll bring the link. So any hanging things we'll bring back tomorrow. Good. All right, cool. So Jesse, where are we going to go from here? So
what I just really covered was this first bullet point here.
Okay, I was wondering because I'm typing to other people, so I'm not listening to everything you're saying. So you haven't got down here yet. All right, keep moving, Chief.
Yep. So we just covered client to server sync. That is basically client to server sync. Basically means you got iPads, you got phones. It does also work with laptops, which we don't get a lot of use for, but it's actually really cool to be able to work on FileMaker on your laptop and then sync it to a server when you have Wi-Fi. But that's bullet point number 1. Let's talk about bullet point number 2. Bullet point number 2 is you've got this big system built in FileMaker server, but you need to also have it running in some other system. Maybe it's MySQL, maybe it's Dynamo, maybe it's Salesforce. Mirrorsync can do all those things. It can do Oracle, SQL Server, Redshift, Amazon Redshift, any JDBC compatible database. It'll support all those things. So we have another very large client of ours. They do non-emergency medical transportation, and they have approximately 2,000 drivers. It's kind of like Uber for medical appointments, and they have 2,000 drivers that go around and pick people up and take them to the doctor's appointments. And there's specialized training and equipment and oxygen tanks and stuff like that. So it's not just quite as simple as Uber. But the point is that they had a web interface that was built in FileMaker. And if you've ever tried to build a web interface in FileMaker, it works, but not when you got 2,000 people accessing it. So what we helped them do was sync that FileMaker database. They've got about 200 to 300 internal people working on FileMaker using FileMaker Pro. connected directly to FileMaker server, and then these 2,000 external people that have a web interface to get to, to pick the people up at their appointments. So we helped them build this synchronization that would sync the FileMaker server database to a MySQL database, and then we built a web interface to talk to MySQL. And that has completely solved their problems. They would have half-hour to an hour outages before, where server needed to be restarted, backups needed to be reloaded. It was actually hanging FileMaker up from the volume. It was causing threads to deadlock. And so that problem has been 100% solved by taking that load off of poor FileMaker server, which is really not designed from the ground up to support 2,000 web users, and then moving that to MySQL, which is designed from the ground up for that exact kind of thing.
Cool.
A similar kind of situation, similar situation. I'll keep it short because it's not that different, but we did a system for a large public school system, and it had to have 60,000 people log into their database simultaneously. And when I say simultaneously, I mean like at 5:00 p.m. and 0 seconds on Friday, because everybody wanted to check and see which programs their kids had gotten accepted into, and that is the time that they posted those results. So basically within like a 15-minute block of time, you had 30 to 60,000 people all trying to hit the website at the same time to check the site and see what programs their kids got accepted to. And we knew that was going to kill FileMaker. We actually knew that was going to kill MySQL too, because another company had done it in MySQL the year before, and that had melted down actually 3 years running and had not been able to handle it. So we did it with DynamoDB, which runs Amazon.com, and it's not even like breathing hard to handle that kind of load. And we used Mirrorsync to sync this FileMaker database to the Dynamo database, and they actually did a load test on it with 40,000 simultaneous people. And they said, going back to my point about scalability, they said that the web application ran the exact same speed with one simultaneous user and 40,000 simultaneous users. So that's just kind of, it's making all of this power and the scalability. Mirrorsync is putting that within the reach of all of us in the FileMaker community. We don't necessarily need to switch to a new tool. We just need to extend our existing tool with Mirrorsync to use these other capabilities.
Absolutely. Yep. That's, and that would be a good another webinar someday we could do, talk about DynamoDB, because it's, that's like unnatural things you do with the database. It's really,
I'd love to. Dynamo is crazy. I was reading that on Prime Day 3 years ago, and I'm sure it's more now. 3 years ago on Prime Day, they measured DynamoDB as sustained just for Amazon.com traffic. They measured a sustained 13.9 million requests per second. 13.9 million requests per second on Amazon.com from people shopping, and Dynamo handled that. So whatever purposes we can think of, Dynamo's going to handle it.
Right, and just the trick is though that when you go into that conversation, everything you think you know about databases, like, oh, it's a relationship and it's a key and this and that, you have to just check all that at the door, because we're starting from scratch. It's like reimagining it, and of course it has FileMaker does things it won't do, right? But absolutely. So it's the right tool for the right job, and any more about FileMaker is about integrating with the correct third-party tool. And then of course we get to kind of the last bullet point here, which is the whole thing about multiple FileMaker servers, which you can use them two different ways. You can put them all together so they're clustering, kind of backed up, ready to go, or you can spread them around the world, or do both, right? So
yeah, and that's going to be the focus of this kind of 4-day thing, is this third bullet point here. We might talk about the first one. I'll leave that up to Richard if he wants to talk more or do a demo or something like that. But I think the heart of this is going to be this third bullet point. So I've got just a few slides here to kind of graphically show what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So the first one is clustering. Clustering means, so the green box on this diagram is a particular Amazon region. And I'm going to be everything that Mirrorsync does, it can do with or without Amazon, but I'm going to be talking about Amazon throughout this, because Amazon has a lot of tools that just are out of the box to do these things. You could do this on your own server, on your own data center, in your own office. You could do it on Azure. You could do it with Google. You could do it with any service provider you want. I'm most familiar with Amazon, and so I'll use Amazon terminology as I'm going throughout this to talk about this. But the green box here represents a single Amazon region. It could be, the Northern California region. It could be the Eastern the Northern Virginia region, which is close to me, Sweden, Bahrain,
Okay,
wherever you're talking about.
let me interrupt. So we talked about this in the last week or two, but basically a region is basically like a town or a small area, and what Amazon does is they set up different data centers in different buildings around that town, for example, right? If that makes sense. So
Yeah. So they've got 22 around the world.
Yeah. They got 20 regions around the world, and within each region is multiple buildings with multiple data centers where that data is syncing and replicating on their own throughout that whole.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So the idea is that if one of the buildings gets hit by an asteroid or something like that, or burns to the ground, really you have that. They provide their own level of redundancy, right? So.
Yeah, they call it an availability zone. So for instance, their Ohio region, that the region is Ohio, and it's kind of designed to serve kind of the Northeast United States. And then they'll have 3 availability zones, which is 3 separate data centers that are kind of like triangularly in the kind of north, southwest, and southeast suburbs of, I think it's Cleveland. I don't remember the exact city. But yeah, they'll have, and availability zones all have direct pipes to each other. So they have, under a millisecond ping times between those availability zones. And it's probably a good idea. So the green the green box I have here, to be clear, does not represent an availability zone. It represents a region. So this would be the Ohio region or the Northern California region. And then your servers could be in the same availability zone, or better yet, different availability zones. So like if Richard said, if a backhoe like destroys their internet connection, and that's not realistic because they have multiple, but if a fire destroyed their availability zone, there would still be your other server running in the other data center on the other side of town. But so the clustering concept, the goal of clustering is to simply increase scalability and reliability. Remember, scalability is not equal speed. Speed is not going to be affected by clustering, but scalability will be. So if you have 2 FileMaker servers that are syncing with each other and they're sharing data with each other, and then you have a bunch of users connecting to those servers, if you split it so that those users are now, half of them are going onto one server and half of them are going onto the other server, now you've put, instead of 300 users on server A, you've got 150 on A and 150 on B. So you're decreasing the amount of load on each server, which is increasing your scalability. It's also increasing your reliability, because if server A goes down or server B goes down, the load balancer, was that orange box in the middle, will shuttle all the traffic over to one. The load balancer is the part that knows which of those servers are up and running. So the users don't connect to FileMaker Server A, and they don't connect to FileMaker Server B. They connect to just FileMaker Server, which is configured in the DNS settings to point to the load balancer. The load balancer looks, feels, and sounds, and quacks just like FileMaker Server, but it's actually passing all the traffic through, some of it to Server A and some of it to Server B, and it makes sure that if a user was connected to A, then all of that user's traffic always goes to A. And if a different user was connected to B, all of their traffic always goes to server B. So the user can't really tell that there are multiple FileMaker servers. There's not 2 different host names or 2 different addresses for them to connect to. It looks to them like they can't tell the difference between whether they're connecting to a FileMaker server or to a load balancer that's kind of secretly splitting that traffic to 2 or 3 or 8 or however many servers you want to set up. And then you've got Mirrorsync, which is the black arrow between those 2 servers, making sure that they stay in sync, so that if one user adds a record to server A, within a few seconds it'll also appear on server B, so that the other half of the users who are connected to server B will see that new record. So it's an inexpensive, fairly simple setup to do. The load balancer costs like $15 a month from Amazon. The FileMaker server, I'm going to jump ahead of my slides for 1 second and show you this. Look at my highlighted text here. This is copied and pasted directly from the license text in FileMaker. Each FileMaker user licensing contract includes 3 licenses of FileMaker server. So you're not having to pay for additional FileMaker server licenses to do any of the configurations I'm going to be showing you today.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
from a cost standpoint, your costs are $15 an hour for the load balancer, plus one extra piece of hardware, plus a license for Mirrorsync.
Okay. So I'm going to just jump in here because we do have comments coming in. So once again, welcome to Stephen Delinsky, I think, is here. Lexi just said this for what it's worth. The last part of your third bullet is my current use case scenario. Client is using third-party hosting based in California. We are now adding a server with the same provider in Hong Kong for the Asia's client user because access for them across the to the U.S. from Hong Kong is unreliable and unacceptably slow. That's the whole point of this enterprise conversation, right? So Lexi, listen, Lexi could give this presentation. I know how she is. She knows all this already. But the short version, we're going to show how easy this is and the tools that we use to make this work. So for those of you wondering, we are going to be showing, I got to see the auto load balancer earlier, and it just made me all hot and I was excited. I was really hot and bothered. It was like, ooh, this is very nice. So so you get to get, but over the next, we can't cram it into 1 hour, so we'll go for another 20 minutes or so. Once again, this is going to be recorded, and we will, clean it up a little bit as we go. But yeah, so what's next, Jesse?
So that's clustering. Let's talk about warm backups. Warm backups are not super sexy, but they're very easy to set up, and they can be invaluable. So a warm backup. Notice, I'm going to jump back to the previous slide. Notice my arrow in the clustering sync is double-ended. It's a bidirectional sync. Everything you write to server A gets written to server B. Everything you write to server B gets written to server A. Server A and B always match, and you can write to both. The warm backup scenario is very similar, but you remove the load balancer and you make the sync one way. Everybody connects to FileMaker Server 1, and then Mirrorsync is just running in the background, making sure that there is an extra server that nobody connects to that exactly matches Server 1. The benefits of this are pretty obvious. If Server 1 goes down, if anything happens to it, instead of hours to try to figure out what was going on and recover it and recover backups and maybe get off-site backups or whatever, you just simply switch your DNS server or your router or whatever your elastic IP address to Server B. And now all the stuff that was on server A, if you're running your sync every 30 seconds, then server B is going to have everything within 0 to 30 seconds of whenever server A went down. It's much more effective than FileMaker backups that you run every hour or 2 or 10. It's much more live. There really is not much of a performance hit when that server is running, when the sync is running in the background. So it allows you to basically just have an extra server that stays very up to date with your primary server. It doesn't have some of the complexities of the load balancer clustering thing that we talked about before.
Okay, yeah, we got a problem here, major malfunction. Nathan Schneider just let the secret out. Nathan Schneider says on Discord, I guess Jesse didn't get the memo, very important memo, that Richard's clients don't do backups. I tell you, and I rail on that topic. I rail because there are people who just they argue with me. We got fired by a customer because they refused to do backups, and we told them that it was going to catch fire and melt to the ground. Actually, Nick Hunter told them this. Nice people, but he told them this and said day is going to come where this is going to happen. You're not going to be, and this is not going to work anymore. He goes, well, we don't like Nathan. He threatened, or Nick. We don't like Nick because he threatened us. I'm like, he didn't threaten you. He just told you what's going to happen when catches fire, right? So they were like offended that, oh, you're threatening us. Like, okay, never mind. It's like arguing with Mother Nature and physics, right? You can argue with physics to a point, but then you get burned. You get burned to the ground, right?
Physics doesn't really care if you argue with it. Neither,
yeah.
Gravity doesn't mind if you agree with it or not.
Yeah, well, I run into that once in a while. So yeah, so it's anyways. Yeah, thanks, Ken, on these guys. All right, so so this is this one, but I mean, wouldn't you just use the other one? Go back one slide. Wouldn't you use the previous one? Because then it would like double. It would do the same thing for you, right? Kind of.
Yeah. So the warm backup, I would say in general, pros and cons wise, I think there's more pros in this scenario than this scenario.
Really?
The advantage of in the LAN clustering, I think this LAN clustering, it gives you, first of all, it splits your load in half, so it increases your scalability, whereas the warm backup does not increase your scalability. The clustering gives you kind of a live failover in case anything goes wrong, whereas the warm backup usually would be something that an administrator would need to go in, flip a switch to switch them over. So I think for the most part, there's advantages to the clustering that you don't have with the warm backup.
Right.
The advantage of the warm backup is that psychologically, it's much closer to what we're used to as traditional FileMaker developers. So, the idea of kind of this third-party proxies, magically shuttling people to different servers can be very bizarre.
Dude, just stop. I'm going to veto this. Right? So Claire's tried this. Claire's tried to do this, right? And
yeah, the standby server.
For those of you wondering about that. And I'm not sure what I should say about that. I'm not supposed to be overly. The thing is with this is like it's a mental thing. So it's like you're saying if we're too old, like that's like I'm old and I'm in a wheelchair and I'm on my walker. I don't want to use a new one because it's too fancy for me, right?
Right.
What?
Okay, well,
I don't understand. This makes no. Listen, they tried this, right? In order for you to switch, so these people would all, so this server would blow up. I don't know if Lexi was here for this or not. This server would blow up, and then what would happen? These people all go, "Hey, our stuff is offline and we're unemployed." And so then you have to find the IT guy, the guy stick figure over here, right? And he has to go over here and come over here and do command line C/// and do like 4 or 5 lines of backs, and then if you can find the guy, 1, he's not playing some game online, or 2, you can get him to log on. Then he can do a bunch of command line stuff and switch the lines so they go over this way. Whereas this previous slide would have done it for you automatically, right? So, it's like an automatic hostage negotiation with the IT guy, assuming that your IT people are friendly and happy, right? Right.
I think that the warm backup is a good transition. I think that this is a very low risk, quick win that you can set up immediately. You can show your client, hey, look, this is working. Then you can kind of go to our clustering scenario where you say, how about if we make this sync bidirectional and we introduce a load balancer? So I would say, do this as a baby step. Do the warm backup as a baby step, and then progress to the clustering.
All right, if you say so, Chief. We just skip to the end and get to the one you want, right? So, which is the whole point of what we're doing today, right? So, I'm not trying to peddle dog doo doo here. Yeah, here we go, baby. Let's go.
So, now let me point out before I really get to talking about this, the LAN clustering option that I talked about before. It's really important to understand that is for people that are in a single geographic region. If all of your users are in one office or one state or one city or one pretty much relatively small area, then the clustering option works really well. But it doesn't work that well when your users are in different continents or countries from each other. So then, rather than doing like a random distribution where, kind of a round robin, you get this server, you get that server, you get this server, you get that server, it becomes a more geographic distribution. Basically, everybody in this geographic area goes to this server, everybody in that geographic area goes to that server, and that way everybody has a reasonably fast connection. And that's what we've got set up as a demo. That's what we're going to be showing you guys. And the idea here, notice that there's no load balancer. I'm going to jump back for 2 slides. Our orange box in this case is a load balancer. So people don't connect directly to FileMaker Server. They connect to the load balancer. The load balancer kind of magically talks to FileMaker Server for them. In this case, instead of a load balancer, you have a DNS lookup. And so I've got some, after these slides, if I have time, I'm going to jump to my browser. I'm going to show you guys how I've configured the DNS in order to enable this using a feature of Amazon called latency-based routing. And latency-based routing is, all it simply means is that you will, when you say, what is the IP address of the server called fmsp.360works.com, Amazon won't just spit out an answer. It'll say, let me see where you are. Now let me see where all the available servers are. And now let me give you the IP address of whichever server is A, closest to you, and B, up and running. And so, so you will always go to the closest and fastest server that is up and running. The up and running is an important part, because if, in this example, if the United States server goes down, Amazon will detect that. And the next time that a United States person says, where is my closest server? Amazon won't send them to the dead server in the US. It will send them to the live server in Europe that might be slow, but at least it's running.
Right, so and that's the good part, because in the event of a failure, what happens is people get routed to the next closest server, which might be not obviously as fast, but it's
Yes.
better than zero, right? So,
Yes.
which is useful.
Yes.
So, yeah. So if people are bobbing up and down, Alexi's agreeing with us about the warm feature, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So, so what we got is about, say, we have about 15 minutes. We're going to go about 10 after, then we're going to roll it for today. But I do want to, at some point today, we're not going to walk all the way through to the end of having, setting this up. I would kind of like to show it though, right? The end product, so people know that, that it is kind of working, right? Even if we just log onto it. So yeah.
Okay. So before I get into that, I'll since I mentioned the Route 53 thing, I'll spend 5 minutes or less and just show that.
Okay.
So my Route 53 console here is, so Route 53 is Amazon's name for DNS, and it's kind of a play on words because DNS runs on port 53. And so that's where Amazon came up with the name. And so what I've done is I have created 4 health checks. Over my dashboard here, I'm in the health check section, and I've got 4 copies of FileMaker Server running, which Richard and staff worked kind of to set up for me. We've got 1 in Northern California, 1 in Northern Virginia, 1 in Ireland, and 1 in Mumbai. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so what I've done is I've configured Amazon to check this server by going to this URL and making sure that URL works.
Hang on, 1 more second. Hang on, because I'm kind of zooming in so people can see this, right? So, all right, so there you go. So that's the URL. Okay, good.
So that is basically making a call to the data API saying, what version of FileMaker Server are you? I could come up with something a little bit more comprehensive to make sure the database and that kind of stuff, but for demo purposes, this is sufficient. It just at least tells us that FileMaker Server is running and the data API is running. And so, in fact, here, just for fun, let's go to Ireland and let's turn off their data API. And this will take a little bit because the checks happen every 30 seconds and there needs to be a certain number of checks that fail before it'll really consider it to be dead. But if we check back later, then I think what we'll notice is that FileMaker Server 3 will show us unhealthy.
Well, let's pause. We'll just pause for a second. So just so everyone's up to speed on this, once again, I'm not talking the Delinskys and Folgers and the TK 55678s. For everyone else, so you can log on to Amazon. When we say Amazon, this is not the shopping part of Amazon. This is the back-end data center technical stuff. And you can run your own virtual server here. In fact, Jesse, can you show us the current home screen for them? Because they revised that, I don't know, a year or two ago, right? They changed the to this. So basically, for those of you who've never seen this before, just as a basic sort of thing, all the way out to the that one. Okay. So scroll to the top. So this is when you log on to Amazon and you have your own server. These are all the really cool things that it can do down here. And I know it's kind of chunky and it's kind of hard to see, but I mean, if you log on, you can see, every one of these, if you're an IT person, is really interesting. Okay, hang on, Jesse, quit moving. Because when you move, then it's chunking here. So, So you got EC.
There's so much.
Yeah, I know. There's EC2 where we build our virtual FileMaker server. Right, we had the S3 is where we have our big, hard drive in the sky for storage. Right, then there's the S3 Glacier, which is super cheap but kind of goofy, slower back storage. If you have many terabytes to store on an ongoing basis, I mean, all sorts of stuff are in here, crazy. And then you saw the at the top was Route 53. So this is basically a computer developer / programmers, most funnest location ever, because there's always something new to learn in here because they're always adding new things. So if you go back up a little bit, Jesse, for me, if you go back up, assuming he's there. Hello, Jesse. There we go. Yeah, so you see, you see the Route 53. So this is a separate service, separate than the virtual servers, right? So Route 53 is checking the health check. So if you want to go back, it should be updated now.
Yeah. So let's take a look here.
Oh man! Oh, there it goes. Unhealthy.
Yeah. And if I go here and I go to monitoring, here's all those checks that worked, and then here's where the checks started to fail.
Yeah.
And so what'll happen is, if somebody in Europe were to try to go to the server right now, Amazon would exclude Ireland from the check, and it would send them to whichever server was closest, either Mumbai, Northern Virginia, or West Coast. And I don't know which one it would be, but Amazon would figure that out and send you to the right place.
Right. And I mean, if you're really serious about this, you'd have a server in Germany and a server in Ireland, and you could put them all over the place, right? So there's not really a limit here. Cool. All right. So that part of it is good.
And then the last ingredient here is, so these are the health checks. This is, here, I got to open this other tab right here. These are the health checks, which I've turned this back on. So before long, it'll come back and say healthy. And then once you've configured the health checks, then you configure the actual DNS entries. And so I've created an entry called fmspdemo.360works.com. And you know, I'm just gonna talk really quickly about this, and we can watch the video if we want. But basically, you set up a CNAME, which is kind of an alias to some other server. I like to set a really short time to live so that I can change it anytime I want and have it be cached for a long time. Then which real server it's going to. So the fmspdemo.360works.com for the US East will go to, this is the actual host name here of the real server. And then this routing policy, the norm case is simple. Simple just means this server goes to that address. But latency means I know that this server is running in this region, and this is the health check that goes with it. And so find, you know, which of these four things are in the region closest to where the user is. So that's how you can set up latency-based DNS.
Okay.
And that's the key to making this kind of work smoothly for users no matter where they are.
All right, so I'm going to repeat these questions and let you handle them, Jesse. So this is from Mohammed, and he says, "Hello, Richard. On FMP, if you on FileMaker, I guess FileMaker platform, if hosted on Amazon, what are the hidden costs does a customer usually have to pay for extra bandwidth consumption?" Right? I mean, the answer is bandwidth out, you definitely pay for. Bandwidth in, not so much, right? Isn't that how that works?
Yeah, bandwidth in is free. Bandwidth out is 9 cents per gigabyte. You have to accumulate a very large amount of traffic to have a significant amount of fees from data out.
Okay, and then
I mean, if you're doing 20 gigs a month, which is a whole lot, that's $1.80 per month.
Yeah. So Mohammed also had another question here, which potentially concerns me. If I'm gonna tell you. Whoa, your redraw there needs to catch up. So he asked the question. Yeah, we'd have to let the screen redraw. It's lost its mind. He asked the question also: can we host FMP apps on a shared cloud storage and have server redundancy? Question mark.
I'm not sure I understand the question exactly.
Shared cloud storage sounds like S3 or something, right?
Right. And no, you cannot. You can put a FileMaker database on S3. You can absolutely do that. And anybody who wants to can download that database and work on their own copy of the database. That works too. What you can't do is you're not going to be able to merge that data together in a simple way. Mirrorsync won't do it. FileMaker Server is not even involved. So you would only do shared storage if you want each user to have their own separate copy that's kind of their own local copy that doesn't sync to anything. If you wanted that data to sync to something, then you would need to have FileMaker Server involved, and you would need to have Mirrorsync involved. And then at that point, it's not clear that there would be any advantage to even having the FileMaker databases located on S3 to start with. You could put them anywhere. You could put them in Dropbox or S3 or just download them directly from FileMaker Server. But you would need Mirrorsync and FileMaker Server if you wanted those offline copies to be able to share data with each other.
Yeah, I think I can't tell, but sometimes these conversations are conversations about how do I use this without using FileMaker Server, and the answer is if you would just want to put it in like storage, like you're going to store a piece of meat in the freezer, or if you don't like meat, whatever you want to put in the freezer. But the point is that it's not really easily edible in the freezer. But that's kind of what S3 is, or this cloud storage is. If you want to have people actually accessing it and actively using it, it has to be on FileMaker Server. And so the conversation is about not one FileMaker server, but 3 FileMaker servers or 4 FileMaker servers. And And if you buy a license, say like you buy a 10 pack or 20 pack or 30 pack of FileMaker, you're going to get 3 servers that you can use, right? Most people just use 1, but you actually get 3 set up in different regions. So we're back to this conversation of how do I share with the world without paying for it, I'm guessing that's kind of the question, right? So we're into an area here where not only do you have to buy FileMaker Server, you have to buy Mirrorsync. And Mirrorsync is not free, but I think it's worth its weight in gold, right? Absolutely, without a question.
So we're coming up at 5 o'clock. I know, Richard, you wanted to do a quick demo. Did we want to have people connect to the server, or
not
do
today.
we want to
Not
do
today.
that?
We're going to
Not
invite
today.
everyone in over the next couple days. At some point, we've got more awesomeness. We haven't even gone through the FileMaker file or any of that kind of stuff, or kind of what we've got cooked up. But why don't you open it on your end, and I can open one on my end. That'll be kind of funny. So I need to go and add a host. So how can I add a host? People are going to be like, "Hey, Richard, we're going to do this with you." Show host. What did you say the host name was for that?
FMSP demo.360works.com.
FMSP demo. FMSP demo dot 360works.com. FMSP demo 360works. Save. Okay. Oop. Got the SSL. Okay, I'm going to open this up now. When I'm going to open this up, we're not going to share the passwords with everyone just yet. But that will be coming. So then, now Jesse opened it up on it's the title.
So my end, it flashed during the startup, but it's in Northern Virginia.
Okay, mine says Northern California right here. So you see that?
Right. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, so he's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. That's why sometimes the screen is a little chunky. Now, let's go to contacts real quick. Each of us go to contacts, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create. It's kind of chunking a little bit, but we're trying this. Hang on, everyone, stand by. What we're going to do is I'm going to create or do you want to create a record? Jesse, you want to put a record on your end, and then do you have a picture?
I'm going to create one for Alexi.
I don't have a picture of Alexi, though, so I don't know what you're going to do there.
I have one either handy.
Okay,
Has that popped up on your end yet?
Okay, no, I got record 6. Now, the automatic syncing is going on. It's replicating, so we're waiting for that to happen. Oh, record 7 is here now. So that is 2 different copies of FM Starting Point Enterprise Edition, the Enterprise one that we have, and it's synced. So, and we haven't even got the conversation whether we're both working on Alexi at the same time. That's a conversation for another day that we are going to, we got 3 more days of this, but we want to show this. Now, what's the important? What's the
let me
important
just summarize what just happened. Because we're all used to the idea that, okay, Richard changes something and I change something and Richard sees it. So what's cool about what we just did? Why is this interesting? The cool and interesting thing is I changed it on a different server than him. I made my change on a server running in Virginia. Richard made his change on a server running in California. And then we both saw each other's changes because Mirrorsync is running in the background, bringing both of those servers up to date with each other. So that's the kind of the essence of what we're trying to do here.
I just did it again. That was about a 1.5 second delay. That's what we're talking about. Now imagine this thing replicates now instead of just the East Coast of the United States, the West Coast of the United States, but there are the servers also in Mumbai, India, and also in Ireland. And then we might even put one together for Australia if we want to throw one together. We'll have to talk about that. So Stephen Dolinsky has a question. If you have a dev server and use DMT, which is a data migration tool, or deploy or auto, I'm sorry, we can't say the word auto in this broadcast. What is the workflow with databases in different locations to ensure that they are synced with the latest version? Stephen Dolinsky, I am sorry to say that you have to come back tomorrow for that. Actually, that's not true. We are going to talk about that. That's a big part of it. Steven's like, oh, I just want everything in 1 hour. Most people are not as smart as Stephen Dolinsky here, right? So I got to bring everyone along. So the question is, if you change a file in location A, how do we replicate that everywhere, right? We are going to do that. It's going to be awesome. It's very doable. It's very simple. Simple, right? Jesse, you want to do a verbal real quick on that? Don't do it, because we have to have a reason that people come back tomorrow, right? So...
Well, it's basically you change one field in the Mirrorsync. So before I even answer the question, I think I would start with the question of my own, which is if you do have like a testing server and maybe a deployment server, what is your goal with the data? Do you want the data to be the same in both of those, or do you want the testing server to have a testing copy of the data and the deployment server to have a deployment copy of the database? If you want the data to be different, if you want testing data in the testing server and live data on the production server, then Mirrorsync doesn't really even enter into the equation. You would use one of the tools you mentioned. I would highly recommend our product, 360 Deploy, which does that very well.
Yeah.
And so you wouldn't need Mirrorsync if you didn't want the data to be the same on both of those servers. But let's say that you had like a staging server and a production server, and you wanted those to be identical to each other. Then you would do that by going into, you would get your everything set to go on the staging server. You would have a sync running, so the staging server has the same data as the production server. And then when you're ready to deploy it to the production server, you would just go into the Mirrorsync table, and there's a field with a calculation in there. You would change that calculation. Mirrorsync would see that the calculation changed, and on the next sync, it would take a full copy of that database from the staging server and move it with all of its data onto the deployment server.
So yeah, so it's a question of whether you'd use deploy or, I don't know. I mean, because deploy is where you're going to get that data migration tool. For those of you who are new, we have a whole set of training. So here it comes as we wrap up the broadcast here. For those of Alexi who haven't seen this before, this is kind of funny. So this is where we have to put the shameless plug in here. So you're everyone ready for this? All right, ready? All right. This broadcast is brought to you by FMTraining.tv, bringing you the greatest in FileMaker on-demand video training. Visit FMTraining.tv. And then we have bundles here. And if you're looking for a double bundle, you can do that. If you're looking for Jesse's awesomeness, where is the... So if you want the Jesse 15% off Mirrorsync deal that expires on June 26th, it turns to a pumpkin. That's the deal you want. Highly recommend it. So, but yeah, I mean, we for a lot of the awesome FileMaker people here, we do a lot of training. A lot of it's kind of more beginning, intermediate, some super advanced stuff. This, I think, as we go along here from day to day, we're going to keep cracking open the level of difficulty, let Jesse get into the code, talk about what happens if we both edit Alexi at the same time and then she hits in between. What happens to Alexi? Does she die a horrible death? How is that handled, right? Those are all great questions. And to be honest with you, we have this CRM called FM Starting Point we've been giving away, and we actually went through a process to, because we use it a lot for training, but it's really been lean designed by Nick Hunter. There's, Nick Hunter. And it's got a great interface, but it's been really optimized for high performance, right? We know it'll do 260, 300, 400 people on a single FileMaker server. So we took it, we adjusted it so it works great with Mirrorsync. And so that is kind of like the default demo go-to CRM, because we also know it'll deploy around the world. It's already working around the world right now. We just only have so much time to show you. So if you folks are around, and once again, if you can't make tomorrow, it will be recorded. But if you're here in person, you can ask questions, which is really awesome. Alexi goes, paying full price for Mirrorsync is way cheaper than roll your own. Yeah, I had an engineer, and to Alexi's comment, I was seeing if this is why Alexi was so great. God, I miss seeing her around. So I had an engineer come to me, and he was like, I'm going to roll my own sync. I'm not going to buy that Jesse stuff or whatever it was, that Goes Inc. or whatever the price sync was. And he goes, I'll roll my own. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, but good luck with that. And so like 2 months later comes back, I'll never do that again. That was the worst. It was so hard. And I'm talking about a guy who's really quite talented, but his ego got ahead of the equation. So, so definitely if you can use Jesse Barnum's brain, which is much better than most of ours, do it, right? And then Stephen Dolinsky, FMP natively isn't ACID. Yeah, so, I didn't want to get into ACID once again, Stephen, because, the ACID is like the super redundancy, availability kind of capability. I think if you have vigorous backups and you have and you're using like Mirrorsync to like either replicate locally or around the world, I think that
is the question whether FMSP is ACID compliant or whether Mirrorsync is?
No, he's just making a statement. Steve was just saying, it isn't natively ACID. So tools like this get us further down the road, which is absolutely, I'm just agreeing. So
Okay.
I mean, Right, so that's the thing, right? So, I mean, the idea is that having multiple servers and then one server can back up for another server. It doesn't really solve the transactional kind of thing, but if you're a talented developer, you can do kind of transactional kind of stuff with FileMaker.
Well, there's a fundamental problem with trying to do distributed transactional databases. The idea that, if you commit it on one server, you know that it's been committed on all the servers around the world. That sounds like a great idea, but the problem is, it thwarts the whole idea of why you're doing it in the first place, which is to improve performance and scalability. Because what that means is that if you're going to a server that's nice and close and convenient to you, and you commit a record, now that server can't return a successful result to you until it's talked to the other 3 servers all around the world and make sure that they've all committed it too. So you wind up working at whatever the slowest speed is of the connection between all the different servers. And so, Mirrorsync and you'll see that in other database relational systems where they'll talk about synchronous transactions, meaning that synchronous meaning they all happen at the same time, meaning that it happens at whatever the slowest transaction is that completes. I think in general, we want this to be asynchronous. We want it to be non-transactional because we want to be able to know that we're working at a fast speed to a local server instead of waiting for the latency all around the world.
We just need a plan to triage the collision, the double Alexi collision thing. So
yes, which we'll talk about tomorrow.
We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So everyone, I want to appreciate you coming to fmtraining.tv once again. Don't forget to keep an eye on this. If you want to sign up and get a reminder, click on that down there. You'll be talking to our FileMaker server, and it will load you into a database, and it'll send you a reminder, which is useful. You can watch it on Twitch, on YouTube, or get the Discord invite, which is up here. And then you can participate. And Lexi and Steven and folks over here definitely if you want to check that out, feel free, because it's kind of a persistent conversation. It's ongoing. We're kind of building a community here of people who are trying to learn. So because that's why I do training. That's pretty much what I do all the time. So anyway, Delinsky had one last question. Can Mirrorsync potentially be an audit log?
We don't really sell it that way. It does actually keep an internal audit log, and it will record a log file, record into a text file every time that it writes a change from one server to another. It's not really written in a way that's designed to be like easily pulled back into FileMaker or queried. It's more for a human being to be able to go back later and say, why did this record change from this to that? There's a big limitation of it for audit logging purposes, which is the way we do deletion scanning and deletion detection. And that's kind of maybe a little bit too long of an answer for right now. But the really short version of it is Mirrorsync doesn't know who deleted a record or when they deleted it. It only knows that a record was deleted. And so a lot of why you want to do audit logging is to know who and when, not just whether. So it has limitations for purposes of audit logging.
All right, everyone, I appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow, 1 o'clock, at the same time, same place, same channel. I want to thank to Ken, Nathan Schneider, Dave 1, Dave 2, Alexi, Steven, Dennis, Michael, all the people from around the world, literally a worldwide audience here. Once again, this is recorded. You'll be able to catch the recording a little bit cleaned up. It'll be on YouTube, etc. But in the meantime, we'll catch you tomorrow. And for now, Jesse and I and the folks at 360 Works, see you later.
See you guys. Thanks, Richard.
Just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected, the quarterback. Great read. good patience, more importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Try to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap, stands in, throws it left for Amendola, reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10, rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.